I'm going to tell you exactly how I would escape the suffocating routine of a corporate existence and build my own fortune, not just through accumulating money, but by mastering the psychology of power itself. Machiavelli once wrote something that most people completely misunderstand. He said that fortune is like a woman, and if you wish to control her, you must treat her boldly. He wasn't talking about luck or chance, he was describing audacity, the raw courage to stop waiting for permission and start commanding your own destiny. I know this truth intimately because I once lived the obedient life that most people never escape from. I earned a modest salary, followed every rule they gave me, waited patiently for someone to notice my efforts, and slowly drowned in quiet resentment while watching others rise around me. But everything changed the day I stopped waiting for fortune to smile on me and decided to seize her by force. If I could travel back in time and speak to that version of myself, the one trapped behind fluorescent lights and a stable paycheck that felt more like chains than security, I would tell him something crucial. The first step isn't about quitting your job in some dramatic fashion or burning bridges. It's about changing your entire psychology, rewiring the way you think about yourself and your place in the world. A man's wealth, you see, is nothing more than a reflection of his chosen skill, his weapon in the arena of life. Machiavelli taught that every prince must possess what he called virtue, not the moral kind that weak men preach about, but the ability to impose your will upon uncertain circumstances. In our modern age, that means identifying your Machiavellian skill, the specific discipline or craft that grants you leverage over others and positions you above the masses. So here's exactly what I would do if I were starting over today. Go to work tomorrow morning, but don't just sleepwalk through your tasks like everyone else around you. Instead, begin studying the work that multiplies power, the skills that create wealth rather than just trading hours for dollars. Open your mind like a strategist preparing for battle. Go to Google, your modern Florence library, and type in professions of millionaires. You'll see a predictable list appear. Entrepreneurs who built empires, investors who multiplied capital, lawyers who commanded high fees, engineers who solved valuable problems, financiers who moved markets, and creators who monetized attention. Now here's what separates dreamers from doers. Don't just skim that list and pick whatever sounds exciting. Build a grid. Rate each profession based on your natural interest and your current competence. Where your genuine curiosity and your current capability overlap, that's where you'll find your first seat of power, your entry point into a different world. When I did this exact exercise years ago, sitting in my cramped apartment after another soul-crushing day at work, I realized something important about myself. I lacked the patience for engineering, the credentials for law, and most importantly, I lacked the desire to obey any boss long enough to climb a corporate ladder that led nowhere I wanted to go. So I turned toward entrepreneurship, not because I thought it was glamorous or easy, but because it was the fastest path to sovereignty. Like a prince who discovers a crumbling castle and decides to rebuild it in his own image, I wanted control over my own destiny, even if that meant embracing risk and uncertainty. But this path I'm describing requires an even harder choice than picking a skill. It requires something that will test your character at its core, and that's the willingness to embrace isolation. You cannot build an empire while surrounded by peasants who celebrate mediocrity and fear ambition. The second step in your transformation is brutal, and most people cannot bring themselves to do it. You must cut ties with the powerless, the dreamers who never act, the cynics who mock what they fear to attempt. Machiavelli warned that a ruler's downfall often begins with poor alliances, with surrounding himself with weak men who drag him down to their level. I learned this lesson the hard way, and it nearly destroyed my ambition before it could take root. When I first announced that I was building my own business, creating something from nothing, I expected support from the people closest to me. What I received instead was mockery, doubt, and dismissal. My friends laughed at my plans, not necessarily out of malice, but because my ambition threatened their comfort. My growth forced them to confront their own stagnation. I remember speaking passionately about what I was learning, the books I was devouring, the business models I was studying, the nights I stayed awake sketching plans and running numbers. They would change the subject within minutes, steering the conversation back to gossip, television shows, sports, whatever distraction kept them numb to their own wasted potential. I realized in those painful moments that my growth had made me a foreigner in my own circle. It wasn't personal, though it felt that way. It was biological. Evolution rewards those who adapt to new environments and punishes those who cling to the familiar. So I made a decision that felt like ripping off my own skin. I withdrew from those relationships, not with anger or drama, but with quiet resolution. It was lonely, perhaps the loneliest period of my entire life, but that loneliness was the crucible that every man who seeks greatness must pass through. You see this pattern throughout history if you study the lives of powerful men. Napoleon was exiled before he returned to become emperor again. Machiavelli himself wrote The Prince while banished from Florence, stripped of power and influence, yet his exile created the ideas that would outlive kings and reshape how we understand authority. Your own separation from mediocrity is the same test wearing a different mask. The weak call it loneliness and run back to comfort. The strong call it preparation and use the silence to sharpen themselves. Here's the truth that no one tells you when you're starting this journey. Your energy is finite, your attention is limited, and your circle consumes both whether you realize it or not. Every conversation that doesn't align with your future weakens your command over it. The poor will drag you into their despair, disguised as realism and concern. The mediocre will mock your ambition to make their own failure feel rational and acceptable. You must protect your mind the way a prince protects his fortress. Every gate closed to invaders, every wall guarded against those who would weaken you from within. When I finally cut off those who ridiculed my ambitions or dismissed my vision as fantasy, something unexpected happened. I didn't just lose friends who never believed in me anyway. I gained something far more valuable. I gained space, silence, focus, a mental vacuum that I could finally fill with knowledge, power, and strategy instead of other people's doubts and limitations. That was when the real transformation began. Because once you remove the noise of the crowd, your own voice becomes audible again. You start to think not like an employee waiting for instructions, but like a ruler planning his first conquest, mapping out territory and identifying opportunities that others cannot see. But here's where Machiavelli would offer you a crucial warning. And ignoring this warning is where most ambitious people destroy themselves. Isolation without guidance breeds delusion and madness. Once you've removed the weak from your life, you cannot simply exist in a vacuum. You must replace them with the powerful, with people who are already living the life you desire, who have already conquered the territories you're trying to reach. The next stage of your rise demands that you step into proximity with those already holding the keys to the kingdom. That is how power transfers throughout history. Not through luck or magic, but through deliberate imitation of the masters. Proximity, as Machiavelli understood deeply, is the shadow of influence. Whoever you stand beside long enough, whoever you observe and study and absorb, you will eventually become a version of them. Once you've silenced the noise of mediocrity and cleared the weak from your inner circle, you must fill that void with intelligence, ambition, and living examples of what you're trying to achieve. Machiavelli observed that men almost always follow the beaten path, and yet by imitation they achieve what others before them have achieved. The modern version of that ancient truth is simple but powerful. Your proximity determines your destiny. If you want to rise among princes, you must stand where princes stand, consume what they consume, think how they think. So here's your next concrete step, and I want you to take this seriously. Replace your broke friends with rich teachers. Think carefully about the hierarchy of influence in your life right now. The average man seeks validation from those beneath him because it's easier to be admired than to be corrected or challenged. The ambitious man seeks counsel from those who can sharpen his mind like a blade being forged in fire. In the age of algorithms and infinite information, your environment extends far beyond your physical neighborhood. It's what you consume every single day, who you follow online, whose language and thinking patterns you start to unconsciously adopt. When I began deliberately shaping my new circle, I made a list of 10 specific names, individuals who had already built the exact life I wanted. Not celebrities I would never meet, but strategists whose methods I could study and replicate. In the Renaissance, ambitious men did precisely the same thing. They apprenticed under masters, studied their techniques obsessively, learned not only their skills, but their temperament, the way they handled pressure and made decisions. The Medici family didn't just build wealth in isolation, they engineered dynasties by training merchants and artists alike, creating systems that outlasted individuals. Today, that same method still applies, and the rich you admire have left behind a breadcrumb trail of psychology and systems waiting to be studied. But Machiavelli offers a sharp warning here that most people ignore to their detriment. Admiration without transformation is just worship, and worship keeps you beneath the person you admire. Don't study successful people to become a fan cheering from the sidelines. Study them to become a rival, someone who will eventually surpass them. When I first began modeling my own mentors, people who were 10 steps ahead of where I stood, I didn't imagine sitting beside them as an equal. I imagined learning their methods and then surpassing them entirely. This shift from admiration to competition activates something primal in you. Your inner strategist wakes up. Because when you view the powerful not as gods on pedestals, but as men who simply played the game longer and learned the rules better, you stop being intimidated and start learning like a predator stalking its prey. That's exactly how I studied the modern elites who shaped our world. I didn't treat them as idols to worship. I treated them as architects whose blueprints I needed to decode. How does Jeff Bezos think about time and the long game? How does Warren Buffett define patience in a world of instant gratification? How does Elon Musk use debt as a weapon rather than a burden? These aren't just billionaires with lucky breaks. They're contemporary princes, men who understood at a deep level that wealth is not earned through hard work alone. It's engineered through systems, leverage, and strategic thinking. Each of them followed Machiavelli's principle that the wise man does at once what the fool does finally. They act with speed and certainty while others hesitate endlessly, seeking permission from people who will never grant it. Now let's talk about time itself, because this is where most people lose the game before they even begin playing it properly. The next pillar of your transformation is learning to treat time as your most sovereign asset, more valuable than money because money can be replaced, but time cannot. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must never waste daylight waiting for opportunity to knock on his door, because idleness is the silent ally of decay and irrelevance. Translate that wisdom into your modern life, and the application becomes clear. Your mornings, your nights, your weekends, these aren't recovery periods for you to numb yourself with entertainment. They're preparation time for building the future you claim to want. The common man burns hours scrolling through feeds, watching other people live, waiting passively for something to change. The ruler in training studies relentlessly, builds consistently, and calculates his next 10 moves while others sleep. When I was still trapped in my corporate job, I consumed knowledge like the way most people consume entertainment, like a drug I couldn't get enough of. Podcasts while driving to work, audiobooks at the gym, notes scribbled at red lights when an idea struck me. You have to turn your entire life into an academy of self-education, where every spare moment is either compounding your potential or quietly decaying it. But here's where most people fail even when they start consuming the right information. They fill their heads with facts and concepts, yet never establish clear targets or concrete goals. The prince always governs towards a specific conquest, a defined territory he intends to take, not vague ambition or wishful thinking. If your goal is to build real wealth, you must define the specific realm in which you'll rule. Is it business, where you create and sell solutions? Real estate, where you control physical assets? Investing, where you multiply capital? Media, where you monetize attention? Every hour you spend learning outside that chosen field is a diversion disguised as productivity, making you feel busy while keeping you poor. Focus creates momentum, momentum builds authority, and authority in any industry becomes the currency that opens doors others cannot even see. Still, studying from a distance can only take you so far before you hit a ceiling. There comes a critical moment when you must step into the arena, into the physical spaces where power congregates and deals are made. In Machiavelli's Florence, power was traded in private gatherings, exclusive salons, and royal courts where the right conversation could change your entire trajectory. Today, it happens at conferences, mastermind events, and rooms filled with investors, entrepreneurs, and creators who are actively building empires. These are your modern palaces, and to reach them, you must pay an entry fee. Not in flattery or begging, but in investment, in being willing to spend money that makes your hands shake when you swipe the card. This brings you to your next threshold, the moment that separates thinkers from doers, dreamers from builders. You cannot amass fortune without first risking what you currently have. While the masses view debt as danger to be avoided at all costs, Machiavelli would call it a weapon, a calculated gamble that forces transformation by removing your safety net. In his own words, there is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, and more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. Revolution, whether personal or financial, demands risk. The question isn't whether you can afford to take that risk. The real question is whether you can afford to not act while opportunity passes you by. So as you prepare to cross into this next stage of your journey, you'll confront that universal moment when your ambition outgrows your wallet, when opportunity stands at your door, but the price feels unbearable.
At this point in your transformation, you've studied the powerful, reshaped your circle, and begun to think like a strategist instead of a spectator watching life happen to you. But here's where most people fall, right at the altar of fear. They hesitate when it's finally time to pay the price that success demands. Machiavelli once wrote that it is not titles that honor men, but men who honor titles. In other words, wealth and power don't sanctify you or make you worthy. You sanctify them through bold action and the courage to back your vision with everything you have. The modern prince must learn to treat money not as security to be hoarded, but as weaponry to be deployed strategically. When I first encountered this principle, it terrified me because it contradicted everything I'd been taught. I was raised, like most people, to worship safety above all else. Save your money, avoid risk, fear debt like a disease. But what Machiavelli understood, and what every modern magnate exploits ruthlessly, is that comfort destroys conquest. A prince who fears spending will never build a fortress strong enough to survive when enemies attack. That's why the truly wealthy see investment differently than everyone else, not as loss or expense, but as transformation. The act of deploying capital, whether that's money, time, or reputation, is what forges the next version of yourself. I remember vividly the first time I made a high-risk investment in myself. It wasn't comfortable or easy. It was a $4,000 marketing course at a time when I didn't even have that amount sitting in my account. I had to borrow it, and the weight of that decision kept me awake for nights. But I knew in my bones that stagnation was more expensive than any course could ever be. I thought constantly of Machiavelli's words that fortune favors the bold, and she's more often won by the impetuous than by those who proceed coldly and cautiously. That single decision forced me into a completely new psychological state, one where failure wasn't an option I could entertain. Debt became the battlefield that demanded victory. In the modern world, this principle plays out everywhere you look if you have eyes to see it. Elon Musk sold nearly everything he owned, even mortgaged his personal homes to fund Tesla when investors were mocking him and predicting his failure. The Medici borrowed aggressively to finance ventures that elevated their family from simple merchants to effective monarchs of Florence. Alexander the Great burned his ships after landing on enemy shores, so his men had no path but forward, no retreat available. These men understood the dark truth that Machiavelli only hinted at in his writings. Necessity breeds greatness. When you remove your escape routes, the only direction left is domination. The weak see debt as chains that bind them to suffering. The strong see it as a sword that forces them to fight their way to victory. That's why I tell anyone serious about rising from their current position, get into rooms that stretch you financially. Pay to attend the conferences where your heroes speak and share their methods. Join the masterminds that make your stomach tighten when you commit the money, not because the event itself will magically make you rich, but because it forces you to become someone worthy of that investment. Every time I entered such a room, paying prices that felt absurd for my income level, I did so trembling, feeling unworthy, outmatched, unknown. But in every single one of those rooms, my ambition sharpened like a blade being ground against stone. Proximity to greatness is deeply uncomfortable, but that discomfort is the cost of admission to power, the price you must pay to transform. In those gatherings, if you pay attention, you start to see the subtle difference between ordinary men and builders of empires. The average attendee takes frantic notes, trying to capture every word. The future millionaire observes behavior, language, positioning. Who commands attention when they speak? Who speaks little but with precision that cuts through noise? Who controls the crowd without raising their voice or demanding attention? These are the mechanics of power that cannot be taught in books. Machiavelli advised that a ruler should always observe the habits of great men and imitate what works, even the ruthless parts that make others uncomfortable. You study not just what they say on stage, but what they don't say. You learn to read silence as strategy, to understand what's being communicated beneath the surface. Before each event I attended, I made myself a strict rule that changed everything. I must have something of value to discuss, some new progress to report. I gave myself 3 months before each major event to create something worth mentioning, a new offer, a product launch, a measurable milestone, because the powerful respect movement, not potential. They've heard 1,000 pitches from dreamers with nothing to show. When I finally stood before those I admired, I wasn't there to take selfies for social media or collect autographs like a fan. I was there to signal value, to demonstrate that I was someone worth knowing. And that shift from consumer to contributor is when doors began to open that I didn't even know existed. There's a Machiavellian law operating here that most people never grasp. A wise prince must contrive that his citizens always need the state, and then they will always be faithful to him. Translated for your personal rise, make people need you. Build something the powerful want access to, and you'll never have to beg for connection again. That's how real influence is forged in the modern world, not through networking tactics or manipulative techniques, but through genuine value creation. But let me take this principle even further, because there's a layer most people miss entirely. Once you're in the room with powerful people, your mission isn't to meet everyone and collect business cards. It's to identify the handful of individuals who can genuinely alter your trajectory. Before every event I attended, I researched obsessively. Who would be there? What had they built? What were they currently working on? What did they desire that I might be able to provide? My personal motto became simple but effective. Become the educated observer. Not creepy or stalking, but strategic and prepared. Preparation is power in a world where most people show up unarmed, hoping luck will smile on them. The Machiavellian shows up with knowledge, insight, and precision in every interaction. You'll begin to see the same dynamic that shaped Renaissance Florence and still shapes Wall Street today. Everyone pretending to be allies, but secretly measuring who is actually worth aligning with, who brings value versus who just takes. Don't resent this game. Learn to play it better than anyone else. You're not there to be universally liked. You're there to be remembered by the right people. Still, one skill determines whether you can convert proximity into actual capital, whether you can turn connections into capital. That skill is the ability to sell, to persuade, to move people toward your vision. Machiavelli called persuasion a weapon sharper than any sword, the art of ruling minds not through force, but through belief and conviction. Because no empire, whether political or financial, has ever been built without the ability to sell ideas, products, or vision. Every modern prince from Bezos to Buffett is a salesman in disguise. Every fortune begins as a conversation. Every kingdom begins as a pitch that convinced someone to believe. By this point, you've taken risks, invested in yourself, and entered the rooms where power circulates and deals happen. But standing among the mighty isn't nearly enough to change your life. Now you must learn to command, to influence, to sell. Machiavelli taught that the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. In our world, this translates directly to your ability to persuade others to follow your vision, buy your product, or invest in your idea with their time or money. The richest men on earth aren't just investors or inventors sitting in isolation. They are master persuaders who can move minds, redirect capital, and bend entire markets to their will through the power of their words and presence. This is why the next law of your ascension is mastering sales, the forgotten language of power that separates the comfortable from the wealthy.
Every single day, you must learn to sell yourself, your vision, your value to the world. The timid call this bragging or being pushy. The wise call it survival in a competitive marketplace. From Machiavelli's Florence to modern Silicon Valley, persuasion has been the invisible currency of empires. Jeff Bezos sold investors on a dream of a digital library before Amazon had any profit. Steve Jobs sold identity and belonging before he sold devices. Even Machiavelli himself, banished from Florence and desperate to return to power, sold The Prince as a guidebook to his former enemies, turning pure strategy into his redemption. That's the transformative power of words wielded like weapons with precision and purpose. I remember clearly the first time I truly understood this truth at a gut level. I had knowledge, I had work ethic, I put in effort, but I had no influence whatsoever. And influence is what translates effort into actual income that changes your life. So I immersed myself completely in the psychology of sales, not the sleazy, manipulative kind that leaves people feeling cheated, but the strategic art of seeing into another person's desires and positioning yourself as the bridge between their current pain and their desired relief. Machiavelli would call this the mastery of human nature, knowing what people truly want beneath what they claim to want. Men are driven by two principal impulses, he wrote, either by love or by fear. The best salespeople in any field know how to use both emotions ethically to create transformation. But before you can sell anything to anyone else, you must first sell yourself to yourself. If you don't genuinely believe in your product, your craft, or your destiny, your tone will betray you every single time. The uncommitted voice trembles and seeks validation. The committed voice commands and creates certainty in others. When I finally internalized that principle and stopped seeking permission, everything in my business changed overnight. My message became crystal clear, my confidence became unshakable, and opportunities began flowing toward me instead of me chasing them desperately. You cannot lead others to believe in you and your vision until you've first conquered your own doubt and uncertainty. Now, once you've mastered the art of persuasion, the next step is precision. Because wealth, contrary to popular myth, is not mystical or random, it's purely mathematical. Machiavelli would absolutely agree with this assessment. Fortune is the arbiter of half our actions, he wrote, but she still leaves us to control the other half ourselves. The half you control completely is measurement, your metrics, your discipline, your arithmetic of conquest and progress. You cannot rule what you do not measure and track consistently. So, define your targets like a general mapping his military campaign with precision. If your goal is earning $1 million, don't just dream about it vaguely. Calculate it down to the daily number. $1 million is simply $2,140 per day for a year. That's your battlefield number, your daily target. From there, reverse engineer your entire path. How many clients, products, or deals must you close each day to hit that specific number? Break it down relentlessly until your ambition becomes completely quantifiable and you know exactly what actions to take. When I did this exercise for my own business, the fog of fantasy lifted immediately. I stopped hoping and waiting and started tracking religiously. Every single day had a measurable objective. Every setback became simply a data point in the arithmetic of ambition, nothing more. Consistency becomes destiny when you measure what matters. But even with perfect metrics and clear targets, you will face resistance, fatigue, doubt, rejection. Machiavelli warned clearly that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle than to initiate a new order of things. Every single time you try to rise above your current station, life will test whether you truly desire it or you're just playing games. Most men surrender right here, not because the path becomes too hard, but because they lose sight of their why. They forget what they're fighting for when the pain becomes intense. This is where the final law begins, the discipline of hunger that separates winners from everyone else. You must wake each day with the reminder burned into your consciousness that you are not yet who you could be, that the gap between current reality and potential is your fuel. When I look at my bank account now, I don't just see numbers or validation. I see distance, the space between where I currently stand and where I must ascend, between the man I am today and the one I was meant to become. Machiavelli would call this productive tension, necessita, necessity, the force that sharpens ordinary ambition into genius-level focus. Every morning, look directly at your goals, then look at your current reality without flinching. Feel that gap deeply. Don't numb it with distractions or excuses. Use it like fuel poured on a fire. It is your proof that you are still alive, still in the game, still capable of transformation. The weak see that gap between dream and reality and call it failure, evidence they should quit. The strong see that exact same gap and call it fire, the energy source that will drive them forward relentlessly. When I started doing this daily ritual, reviewing my vision and my reality side by side without sugarcoating anything, it kept my mind ruthless and focused. It reminded me constantly that comfort is the enemy of greatness. The moment you stop feeling that productive hunger, you stop moving forward, and the world begins to pass you by while you sleep. So, remember this above everything else. Wealth is not just a number in an account. It's a mirror reflecting your capacity for mastery, your tolerance for risk, and your resilience when everything seems to be falling apart. To command your life like a prince commands his kingdom, you must think like one, strategically, coldly when necessary, yet with purpose burning beneath the surface. The men who become millionaires don't worship fortune or pray for lucky breaks. They use her. They don't wait for permission from anyone. They take what they've earned through preparation and bold action. Your potential, as Machiavelli would say, lies not in virtue as the world defines it through moral platitudes. It lies in the virtue that bends chaos to your will, that transforms uncertainty into opportunity. Fortune tests every man who seeks to rise, but she ultimately yields to those who dare to strike her with precision, patience, and concentrated power. The choice before you now is simple, but not easy. Will you remain in the comfortable prison of your current life, or will you step into the arena where fortunes are built and legacies are forged? The path I've laid before you is not theory, it's the exact blueprint I followed to transform my own life from quiet desperation to sovereign control. Now, the only question that matters is whether you have the courage to follow it.